Joining me right out of the gate this morning from Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, Dan Lennington. Good morning, Dan. How are you?
Good morning, Meg. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on this morning.
Well, let's chat about, and we were talking off air, and I just, honestly, I'll just say, we have Trump and his administration and all the rest of us that voted for him have 4 short years to accomplish a lot, and maybe not even 4. Honestly, I think that's why he's flooding the zone with all of his actions and executive orders, etc. Very grateful, and it's exactly what I voted for, but happy to see, too, that the Trump administration is ending, well, this I guess you'd characterize it as more DEI and Will's involvement, correct?
Yes, I would just caution people, though, that it has only been 134 days since Trump has been inaugurated. It does sometimes seem like he's been president again for years, but it has only been 134 days. And so there has been a tremendous amount of movement, and I think every day that goes by in every program or policy or regulation or department that needs to be turned around or uprooted or dismantled is just evidence of all of the work that's been piling up over the past 4 years in the Biden administration. And still things left over from the Obama administration that we're dealing with. So, yes, every day is a new day, and we think about all the work that must be done to get rid of, especially things like DEI and radical transgender policies and things that hurt Americans every single day. But it's only been a short time. We have a lot more time to go. So this most recent victory we have at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty is probably, I would say, our biggest victory ever. In 1983, the federal government created what's called the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, the DBE program. And this is the policy of America on how we build highways, how we build roads, bridges, underpasses, overpasses, highways. When you guys are going down the road and you see highway construction, as we're going to see here in the summer, even on local county roads and city streets, almost all of that is funded by the federal government in the U.S. Department of Transportation. And since 1983, the DBE program has required states and cities to set aside at least 10% of all the money that they're going to use to build roads, highways, bridges for minority-owned businesses. And this has completely distorted the market, and it's changed the way we fund transportation and build projects in America, and it has driven up the cost to the taxpayer for roads, bridges, and highways. And so it's something to think about when you go down the highway and you see construction and you see all sorts of different types of companies and small businesses, probably from your local area there, that are doing the asphalt, they're doing the milling, they're doing the striping, they're putting down the rumble strips, they're doing the painting, they're doing the landscaping and the mowing, and all those are private companies. Those are not government employees. Those are private people who live in your community and are getting government contracts to do that work and using that to put food on their table. But the federal government has set aside some of that money and said you can't compete for that if you're a white male. You have to be a female or you have to be a minority to compete for this project or that project. And that adds up, and it's added up to billions and billions, actually probably over $100 billion during the life of the program. And last week, the U.S. government, the Trump administration, agreed with us at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty to end the program once and for all. They have agreed that the program is unconstitutional, that set aside money for racial groups is unconstitutional, and that it has to stop. And so we will see a lot of results from this. The cost of road construction in America will drop. More projects will be opened up to more small businesses. And the costs to taxpayers will drop. So we think that's a huge victory. The last appropriation from Congress to fund this program was $37 billion. That's just an insane, $37 billion is an insane amount of money, but that's the amount of money that the Biden administration put aside to fund minority-only businesses who are involved in constructing roads and bridges in America. And that money has now been opened up and is available to all sorts of small businesses that can benefit from those government contracts. And it's a huge victory, and we still have some I's to dot and T's to cross, but we're very happy with this victory, and it's a signal that the Trump administration is undoing very, very large and significant programs that the Biden administration foisted upon us.
You know, sometimes I feel like we're talking about monopoly money, Dan, because, I mean, that's where, in light of our, $37 trillion debt, where's the money going? I mean, where's the money coming from at this point? I mean, I understand there is money coming in, but it's really, I don't know what the word is. I'm incredulous as to how flippantly many of our elected leaders view taxpayer money.
Yeah, it's, Ron Johnson has been pushing this really really hard in Congress, because if you remember back to before COVID, the federal government spent, I think it was like $4.5 trillion a year, and we thought that was an insane amount of money. But because of COVID, that ballooned to over $6 trillion a year for fiscal year 2023. It's supposed to go over $7 trillion, and we've just never undone. We've never stopped the emergency. The emergency of COVID is still going on. You would think that if the government was going to balloon up for some sort of an emergency, like a war or a pandemic, that it would then recede and it would shrink back to the way it was. I personally think we should be able to live on $4 trillion as the federal government should be able to live on $4 trillion adjusted for inflation even since 2019. And that level, no one was starving, and no elderly people were not eating cat food, and all the things that the Democrats tell you are going to happen if we somehow bend the curve of the growth of entitlements in America, or we somehow tell people who are on Medicaid and are able-bodied that they have to work. All these things. If we do these modest reforms, that we're some kind of all these bad things are going to happen. These parade of horribles. People won't be able to go to the hospital anymore, and our senior citizens won't be able to buy groceries. Like that is constantly the drumbeat from the left, is that if we don't spend $7 trillion this year, and we don't spend $8 trillion next year, and $9 trillion the next year, that somehow our senior citizens are going to be destitute, and poor people can't go to the hospital. That's not true, and that's just a fear mongering, and that is what has in part driven people to the polls for the Democrats, is those sort of talking points.
Well, and they found that they work, Dan. That's the problem.
Yeah. And at some point we're gonna run out of money, and we're printing money like monopoly money, as you said. But every time we print money, we don't have it. It raises the price for everybody else through inflation, and so this money is not being actually invented; it's being taken away from us through inflation and a hidden taxation. So it's really dangerous, and hopefully, Congress can do something a little bit to bend the curve of spending that we have in our trajectory.
So we were chatting off air too about one of the topics we're going to discuss, and you used the term, this is wild. Checkoff programs, what are they, and how horrible are they?
Well, a checkoff program is a fee or a tax that the government allows an industry to impose on itself, and then allows a private entity to spend that money. So the example here in Wisconsin is called the dairy checkoff. And the dairy checkoff is for, every certain amount of milk that a dairy farmer sells, a little tax is put on every 100 pounds of milk that's sold, and that tax goes to a private association, a private company that gets to spend that money how they see fit to promote that product. So if you remember back in the 80s and 90s, there was a advertisement that said "Got Milk." Remember "Got Milk"? Like Michael Jordan
Oh yeah,
and all these
the
famous
milk
people.
mustache.
Yeah,
Right.
that was paid for by the dairy checkoff. And that is a tax that's imposed on our dairy farmers. They don't have a choice whether to pay for it. They have to pay for it. And the people who decide on what to do with that money is called the Milk Marketing Board. And back in the 90s, they decided that they wanted to promote milk. And now that same marketing board, they want to promote cheese. It's all about cheese. We're going to basically promote Sargento and all the cheesemakers, which is great. But there are still milk producers that maybe they want their product promoted. But the point of it is that the government should not be imposing a tax on an industry and then allowing some private board, which has no electoral consequences, to decide how to spend that money. So it would be as if there was a tax on radio personalities, and they would take $500 away from you a month, and then they would require you to pay that, and then some board in Washington D.C. would decide, how are we going to promote radio in America? We do that with lawyers. I'm a lawyer. I have to pay the Bar Association dues every year. And this private group called the Wisconsin Bar Association gets to decide how to spend my money. I don't have a choice whether to be a member of that association. I'm compelled to fund that association, and I'm compelled to abide by whatever speech they want to promote by the Wisconsin Bar Association. So we have this a lot in America, of these private associations that force people to pay dues or fees or some sort of tax, and then you have no control over how the money is spent. But you're forced to associate with the speech and the ideas that are coming out of that. So, if you're a dairy farmer and you just sell milk, you're not getting a lot of benefit from the marketing board that now wants to market cheese. And so, we should be able to keep the money that we make, and we shouldn't be compelled to associate with associations we don't agree with.
Well, I agree. I've had conversations with your colleague, Skylar Croy, about this, because we talked to, and we've I don't know, hypothesized that wouldn't it be interesting to have an alternative to the Bar Association for attorneys that don't believe that they're being best represented here in Wisconsin by the Bar Association. And I don't know where that would ever go, but it is frustrating because it's in my opinion, at least, I guess I'll just say from what I've learned about it, is that it's politicized.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea that our dairy farmers in Wisconsin, it's a huge part of our economy in Wisconsin. We're the number one dairy producer. We have the best cheese and the best milk, and we export a lot of it. It goes into a lot of the food all over the country, and these dairy farmers are subject to the whims of the weather and the market, the feed costs, the fuel costs, and every little adjustment makes their life very hard. And so we should be supporting them. And, I've talked to you before about how we're supporting Adam Faust, the dairy farmer from Chilton, and we still have not heard yet back from the USDA about these financing programs and grant programs that they discriminate still against farmers based on race. But we should not even be having this conversation. Agriculture is the backbone of the American economy, and we should be supporting our farmers and allowing them to do their job so they can put food on our tables and food in our grocery stores, so that we don't even have to ever think twice about it. But opposing all these taxes and fees and regulations on them, we're going to go the way of Europe, which has a incredibly shrinking farming sector. The farmers in the UK, in France, and Germany struggle so much under all the regulations of the EU, and there are huge numbers of farmer suicides in the UK. There's huge numbers of bankruptcies, and small towns are just shrinking and dwindling, which is just sort of like a more vivid picture of what's happening in our small towns, which are shrinking, and small businesses are shrinking in small towns, and small town populations are dwindling, and it's much more pronounced in Europe, but it's sort of the way we're going right now, and we have to think about what sort of country we want, and what sort of values and liberties we want to protect in our country.
Amen to that. Hey, before we run out of time, two more things, and I didn't prep you for this, and I don't know if you've heard of it, and you can decline to comment if you can't or aren't aware of it, but I did see on May 22nd, the United States Supreme Court voted 4-4 to reject authorization for the nation's first publicly funded religious charter school. So I don't know if you heard about this, but
Yes.
in Oklahoma, what's your reaction to it? And I mean, is it a bad precedent to set for our school choice program here or charter schools here in Wisconsin?
I'm a huge supporter, and we are at will of school choice and charter schools. One of my sons goes to charter school here in Oconomowoc. We definitely support charter schools. Oklahoma has a different system than we do, and they have some religious schools, Catholic schools, that wanted to join their charter program. And the question is whether a religious school can join the charter program, or if it just has to be a non-secular private school. Wisconsin, we don't really have that problem because we don't have a lot of Catholic schools or Christian schools that would want to join the charter program. Right now, they're in the choice program. For example, here in Oconomowoc, I go to St. Paul's Church and St. Paul's Lutheran Church. They have a school, and that's part of the choice program. I don't think there's the appetite in Wisconsin really for Christian schools, Catholic schools, to join in and be chartered by the government. And so I don't have the sky is falling concern about that decision. I think there are other decisions that I've been much more upset about, but I don't think that particular decision really risks. It was kind of a win-win. If Oklahoma won, it would open up things in Wisconsin to charter schools, and Christian schools could become charters, which is something we don't have or don't have the desire. But if we lost, it was not going to be a big deal. So I don't think it's a super big deal.
I appreciate your perspective, and that's what I wanted to get. Okay, so finally, there is a Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty will event here in Wausau next week, a week from today, and there are going to be all kinds of you guys here. I was excited to hear how many of your attorneys, those whom have been guests on the Meg Ellefson show, that are going to be in Wausau next Tuesday. Let's hear about it.
Yes, well, I'll be up there June 10th, Tuesday, June 10th. Happy hour starts at 5. We'll have a program at 6. It'll wrap up by 7:15. It's at the Folk Farm on Clover Road in Wausau. It's $25 a person. You can go to our website, will-law.org/Wausau event 25. We have our own URL, so will-law.org/Wausau event 25. Come out. It's very casual. It's dress for the weather. We'll have food, have a good time, and we'll talk about the cases we're working on and what we have in store for the future.
And
you will be the MC.
Yeah. Minor detail, but yes, I will be there as well. I look forward to it very much. So yes, again, for our listeners, and the easy way to do it too is if you don't want to do the / blah 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 Wausau event 25, you can just go out to the website will-law.org, and then up at the top there's an events button. You can click on that and you'll find the Wausau event there. But $25 registration includes bevs and appetizers, and of course, a great evening of interesting conversation. So, Dan Lennington, always a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for joining me.